Hi, I'm Holly, I'm a writer, and today's video is quite exciting, for me anyway. Um, there has been this sort of trend online of personal curriculums, and I've seen them on TikTok, I've seen them on YouTube. I quite like watching them because it's interesting to me to see what people are putting into them and, how they're sort of laying them out. It's a concept that I've wanted to do for a while, but with a name and a level of structure that I wouldn't have personally gone for, but which I think would probably actually solve the problems that I've had when I've failed in the past to do this. So, first things first, basically, it is a personal curriculum. It is the idea of structuring your personal endeavors, your learning pursuits, and pushing yourself even though you're not obliged to be doing so, right? So, for example, mine personally, I want to learn the violin. I've wanted to do this for so long, and I have a violin. I have a book about the violin, and there is so much free stuff online. There is literally no reason why I shouldn't have learned, but every time I started, I got overwhelmed and then stopped. And so I think that this structure will really benefit that. I've already written up the first 4 weeks, this month basically, of October. It's the first currently. And then I haven't really put my reading stuff in because I hit my reading goal for the year. This is the book I'm currently reading. It's Atlas Shrugged. This will come up in a second for a reason that I will explain. However, basically, I'm just allowing myself to read whatever book. I've hit my goal of 50 a year. I'm past it. I think I'm actually at 55. And so I think it makes sense that I would read super long books now, to me, because I read The Count of Monte Cristo. That was one of the books that I read in the reading goal itself. And I read Easter Eden, which is pretty long too. So it's not like I wasn't reading long books, but I have a book that I have, I think, 800 pages left. This one, I'm only 400 pages in, so I literally have 700 pages left to read. And I'm being kind to myself with my reading, so I'm not putting any goals on here related to just reading through the books on my shelf. However, I do have some stuff that I want to do for university. I'm taking another year out. I don't know if I've mentioned that on here or whatever, blah blah. Really difficult to keep track of what I've said and what I haven't said because I say so much and yet so little. But basically, I am still not quite right physically, so I'm taking another year off, which means that I have another year before I have to start writing my dissertation and before I have to start really thinking about it. But I know what I want to do, and before it was just a general idea of I think I want to do it in this sort of vein, in this level, this philosophical thought. I hate that I just did that, I'm sorry. Basically, for example, you have things like post-colonialism, ecological eco-criticism, that's the one, feminism, Marxism, blah blah blah. You have all of these different thoughts of, when you read a text, you can identify these different elements that play into or go against these thoughts, these schools of thought. My god. But that's what you kind of do in a dissertation, is you identify themes, you identify ways of reading a text that is kind of interesting and that brings up new ideas. And so I know what I want to do with that, and I didn't know for a really long time the specifics. I think it's very good, especially because the text that I'd chosen the works of Donna Tartt. All of her books are 600 to 800-ish pages, I think, give or take. I think it actually, I don't know how long The Goldfinch is, but again, The Goldfinch will come up, okay? We'll get there. But basically, I want to do some stuff towards my dissertation because I want to keep my brain in an academic space. Just because I'm not going back this year does not mean that I cannot be reading about like literature and preparing myself to be writing in that academic way again. And I think a good start would be to make some proper notes on my dissertation so that when I do start back next year, I'm not like, because I didn't do anything. So that is in here, even though my other reading goals aren't. And also I'm pretty good with my reading. Like, I read 50 pages a day. That's currently not super possible because this is one of those books where there's like twice as many lines on a page. So depending on how long I give myself to read, it just isn't physically possible for me to do that. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the books that I've been reading. I've been DNFing a lot of books if I'm not enjoying them because I've met my goal. I'm not bound to anything. Goals are arbitrary anyway, but like, my goal is what it is because I want to get through all of my books, and I want to be making sure that I'm not buying books that I then don't read for 5 years, you know? Like, I want my bookshelves to constantly be the number of read books going up compared to the number of unread books staying stable or going down. So yeah, no personal reading goals, but academic goals. I also want to do French. I was so good with my French for a while, and then I just fell off. Like, I completely forgot about it. And I have this, it's French for Dummies, but it's all in one. So it has like a bunch of different sections. And I was working through that, and I was working through it in the way that like I did not move on until I had memorized the stuff. And so like I still remember stuff because I did do the work, and I would linger on a certain chapter for like a week if that was how long it took me to be able to remember it off the top of my head. Even if it was like one word that I was having trouble with, 1 week at least on this sort of thing. And I have like a whole notebook that I was writing my notes in because it does help to write things physically with a hand on a pen and a paper or a pencil or paper, whatever. That like has been proven to work. I suppose it would work with like an iPad or something as well. It's, you know, it's just like the action of moving your hand. It works. So I want to get back into my French. This one single hair is really annoying me. But yeah, so French, violin, my academic stuff. And I'm not going to be buying too many books for personal use in the upcoming months because I'm getting stuff for the holidays. It's my birthday in October as well, so it's like, it's not just Christmas, it's my birthday, so it's kind of, you know. But again, I don't want to have like too many books unread, but what I do want to do is start diversifying my reading very intentionally, which I've already done. For example, I finally bought The Fire Next Time by James Baldwin. That was one of the first books that I read this year. Actually, I bought it and then I read it almost immediately. I have wanted to read that book for a really long time, and I thought it was longer than it is. It's literally like 100 and something, I think maybe less than 200 pages. And it's an essay, it's not fiction. I also read Giovanni's Room by him, I think like immediately after, which is fiction, and I actually didn't enjoy that so much, but I still plan on reading some of his fiction. And I think that it, like, that isn't the same as saying that I have no reading goals. Like, I'm not saying I want to read this many books. I'm just saying that I want to become aware of some books that I'd like to read that are more diverse, written by authors from places that I've never been, by authors who are people of colour, written by people from different walks of life than myself, because that's important. And I have, as I said, I've read a lot of Japanese books. I say a lot, like, it's a fair few, and I haven't enjoyed all of them, but I like the style usually. One of my favourite authors is Japanese. I've also read I read a book which was by, I think, a Spanish it was a book that I read recently. It was by somebody who basically wrote a book about the art of translation, and specifically from the perspective of a character who does not speak English. One of the characters is Spanish, that's what it was. Well, not Spanish, but like Spanish speaking. No? Do they speak? I can't fully remember but like I remember the story very well. It was interesting. It wasn't my favorite book, but I picked it up years ago because I loved the cover and it was signed. And I'm pretty happy that I did read it because it was an interesting book. But like it's that sort of thing of reading from different countries. It's that sort of thing of just reading from different countries and reading about different people. And this is not the point of this video, what am I? But that is on my list, basically, is to intentionally be seeking out other stories so that when I do buy other books, I can ask for stuff that is like that, you know? There's also a few non-fiction books that I want to buy. There's a book called Black England, I believe, which is about Black people and like their origins in England, because they've been here for a lot longer than some people seem to think. I wanted to read books about like the Vietnam War and its like effect. I wanted to read books about like the revolutions and stuff. Again, this is part of it, is that I'm writing on my Substack. I haven't done that in a while because my brain has been fried for the past like 2 weeks. It's been so bad. And I just keep forgetting to like do it until like the end of the day when I'm just like, so I want to diversify my reading, and I want to diversify my non-fiction as well. Which one of the books that I did get, as my mum is so bad at this, she'll buy me stuff for my birthday but then not give it to me on my birthday. So she got me a copy of Killers of the Flower Moon, which is about it's called like The Birth of the FBI, but to me it's more about the Native Americans and the way that they've been treated. There's actually a book that I want to read about the Comanche tribe. Is that how you say it? I don't know. I have to look that up. But I have Lonesome Dove, which is a Western, and I'm pretty sure that one of those books is the name of the tribe, and so I'm not sure, but obviously Westerns, like cowboys, were natives mostly for a really long time. So I'm interested to read those and see about that, and to learn more about Native Americans and like the Civil War, for example. I also got The Lost City of... I'm not saying... I hate it. Whatever. There's a bunch of books like that, basically, that I want to read. So yeah, I want to diversify my reading, and that's on here. That's all I needed to say. Whatever. I also would like to start doing exercise, and I haven't actually written that in, so you'll see me add that in a second when I show you my Notion setup, because I got Notion specifically for this purpose. I already had a Notion account, and I don't love it. I don't use it. I feel guilty not using it because I spent legitimately like so long setting up when I was like, I think I was maybe like 15, and I was like, I gotta set up my Notion. And I didn't use it. So I've set up a completely new account specifically for this. And I'm hoping that I will actually use it. And I'm going to show you it. It's based... This is where this book comes in. It's based on... I say it's based on... The home screen is based on like a train terminal. Because that book is about a railway, kind of. It's not like about a railway, but it's got a railway as like a huge thing. And I love trains. I've always loved trains. I think that's why I liked that book to begin with. I started reading that a few years ago. I stopped just because I stopped. Like, you know, I wasn't super consistent with my reading for a really long time, from after like the age of maybe like 14. But I read like 150 pages before I stopped, and then I am reading it from the beginning now as well, and I'm again like 400 pages in. But it's called Terminal, the homepage, and it's got like an image of what I'm pretty sure is a plane terminal, but we can pretend. because it's just, I don't, it's there's no people really, like there's a few people but you can't really see their faces, which I like. I don't like people on my computer, like anyway. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to do on my personal curriculum, so I am starting writing. I'm supposed to be doing that today. I got so distracted today. I just have done nothing all day. Wow. But I was planning on starting today writing my World War II book, which doesn't have a name. It's just Project World War II so far. That's the only name I've got for it. But while I'm doing this, I kind of got the itch to write my first fantasy story. And like, I have obviously written a science fantasy. I wrote like a historical fantasy about vampires in Romania in like the 1970s. But I mean like epic fantasy, like a high fantasy story in a completely fictional world with magical creatures and stuff. And I have planned for a really long time, like before I even had the idea for the other sort of books that I've written. Well, I had one of them since I was like 12, but like the Formation Lab did not exist at the time. The Romeo and Juliet vampires did not exist. This World War II book, brand new idea, did not exist. But this idea, I've called it tentatively The Search for Happiness. I do not like that name anymore. I don't think it fits. I want to find a different name, but I feel like it's going to come whenever it comes. But I've been calling it The Search for Happiness because I feel like I feel like I might as well call it what I know it as, you know? But basically it is a cozy fantasy standalone, and I've always been interested in being a fantasy writer. My mum, if you were to ask her, she would be like, oh, you want to write fantasy? And I always thought like it would make sense to start with a standalone with a single encapsulated world that makes sense. And so this story, it always made sense to me as being the one that I started with because it's the most simple. It's the one that I would be able to sort of get a foothold in the fantasy genre before I moved on, right? I wrote a little bit. I will post on the screen the like screenshot of the first bit that I wrote, because I had a vision and I was like, I've got to write this like right now. So I did. But I'm not going to be actually properly writing it. And even as I was writing, I had to like stop and be like, what would this place be called? What would this be called? What would this mean? You know, because I hadn't thought that through. I'd done a little bit of world building, not a lot. So I basically want, while I'm writing Project World War II, to, in a fun way, the same way that I did Formation Lab, where I would just like a little bit, like every now and then when I'd get an idea, I want to write down my notes and figure out this world so that when I finish Project World War II, I can write this fantasy world, because I feel ready for it. I feel like my writing is in a place where I could write this book. Okay, I know how to write a book now. I could write this fantasy, which I have had in my head since I was like, again, like 15 years old. I was pretty young. I came up with this idea. It's very feel good. It's, you know, it's about like life and about finding joy, which is why it's called The Search for Happiness, if you couldn't guess. And it's about this young woman who meets this man, which you'll see in the, it's like the opening, is their meeting, and they go on this journey together. It's a journeying sort of story, because I love those. I'm sorry, I grew up, the first like purely like sort of, you know, the like classics of fantasy, the first one of those that I read was The Hobbit, when I was like 10, 11, no, 10, yeah, when I was 10 years old. And so I love them. I'm sorry, I love them. And so I will be writing at least one journeying, adventurous fantasy that is very feel good and cozy and that has like sweet themes. And then I plan I have this whole world that I've been developing for years, like as I just think of things, you know, absentmindedly, like, oh, I take inspiration from this thing that I see. I think one of the things was lily pads. There are a bunch of lily pads on my university campus in the like lake thing. There's a lake. I don't. And there's like so many lily pads, and I love it. It's so cute. I love these lily pads. And I saw them and I was like, I have an idea for those in my fantasy world, and I love them. I love what I came up with for this and like the lore that I've been building. And this is like a huge Robin Hobb sort of style. I haven't read Discworld yet, don't, but I think it's again that sort of thing where it's like loads of different stories but in the same world. So the politics that you read in one story impacts the events in another story, even though it's set in a completely different place. Like, I love the idea of that. I love the idea of doing that. And as you can maybe guess, the fact that I have a whole universe planned of this book is why I'm not writing that first, because it takes so much. Like, I'm gonna need to weave these stories. I'm gonna have to come up with like every book before I write it, you know? But I have the basic premise of one and like another. I have a few religions and stuff like that because I find that stuff interesting to plan in my free time. But I want to focus my planning on this book, which I don't put as much effort into because I've had this like very strong idea of what this is for like my whole time of having it in my head. Whereas the other one is one that I'm like specifically trying to build up slowly over time, which means that I think about it without really thinking about it. Whereas this one, why would I think about it? I already know. So I need to start thinking about it. And I'm gonna basically, okay, go through, and I guess I'll put it up on screen, like a screen recording, so that you can see this. So if we go to, so this is the terminal. It is, hang on, let me scooch. I don't know if I'm even still in the frame. I'm assuming I am. This is the terminal. You can see the picture. That's like, to me, that's definitely an airport. Like, there's no way that that's not in my head an airport. But we're gonna pretend, okay? This is a world of fiction. This is a train terminal. And so we have this personal curriculum thing that you can see, and you click on it, you've got this image that I've seen like everywhere. I like, it is so popular. But yeah, this is its books, because it's my personal curriculum, and I love that the colours match. It's just like a fun little thing. Even like to this, the sort of orangey, like the terracotta sort of, like I love that. Maybe I've been too much in Natasha's head. For anyone who doesn't know, Natasha is my character in my book Formation Lab, which I'm querying, and her favourite colour is orange. She loves orange. And she loves her favourite type of octopus, which is her favourite animal, is like this sort of orangey, peachy colour, which is part of the reason why it's her favourite colour. That's in the book. In fact, it might not be in the book anymore. That might have been one of the scenes that got deleted. Whatever. Anyway, personal curriculum. You can see I haven't actually added. So we're going to add onto my list in a second. Week 1. This is a 4-week curriculum. I haven't written beyond that because I cannot think that far ahead, and I don't even know if I'm going to stick to this. We can see. Learn how to read sheet music is the first thing. As I said, I've gotten really overwhelmed. I am not fluent in sheet music. I do not know, just when I'm like looking at something, how to like understand what these like notes are in the thing. So I want to get better at like being able to at a glance be like, oh, that's an A, that's a G, that's a this thing. Because I think that's like step 1, and I've always avoided it, and it was the biggest problem that I had the last time that I tried seriously to learn. So we're doing it. Then we have research books by Vietnamese authors. This is, as I said, it's to enhance my reading lists for the future books that I buy. I do have a few that I think already fit this category, but I'd like to just get a bit more. And Vietnamese, it was just the first thing that came to mind. I was like, what is an area on like the other end of the world? Vietnam. Reread and relearn previous notes on French. This is basically, it's revision of what I've already learned. I don't know why I didn't just say revise previous notes on French. That is, I think, a solid first step, is to make sure that the foundation that I had already built is still secure before I start building off of it, because otherwise I'm gonna just have no idea what I'm doing. We then have read 3 articles or journals about the upper classes in the USA. I'm not gonna spoil exactly why I'm looking at that, but let's just say it might be related to my academic life. We then have research wealth mythos. The fantasy book that I was talking about, the one that I'm wanting to plan, there is a lot of Welsh-isms in that. A lot of Welsh words, names spliced together, potentially wrong. I need to look over that eventually. For now, I'm just kind of going with it because I don't speak Welsh, so I don't know, and it would take a lot of effort for me to check, but I can check that in the editing stage rather than right now, because I don't want to do that. I'm being lazy. Okay, let me be lazy. It's fine. The finished version will be sensitive to Wales. But I grew up going to Wales a lot. It's like right there. That's like not the right direction at all. It's like that way. But I love Wales. I've always loved, like, it's, you know, and for example, I know that like The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, they were very heavily inspired by the Welsh landscape. I get it. I fully understand it. You also have like the general like northern England in the west. Again, I love this. This is like my favorite bit of the country, which it should be, because you should love where you're from, I think. It's kind of sad when people don't, because it's valid that they don't, but also I think that we should be capable of being proud of where we're from without it meaning that we are not very good people. So I am pretty proud, and I love Wales. I love like the country. I love the landscapes, the sort of, and so I want to look up the mythology of Wales and the things that are there, and to see if there's anything that I could take inspiration from, more than just like the language and the greenery and the, you know, because I do think that I want it to feel complete rather than just like, oh yeah, this sounds cool, so I did it. Because it's based very much on the fact that when I'm in Wales, that is one of the places where I'm able to feel almost like this is a fantasy world, you know, where I feel that genuine love of nature and that appreciation for the world that exists around us. So that's what I want to do. I'm also going to add, I'm not going to do any more of that nature thing on there. I don't think that there's any need to. But I would like to start Pilates because I think it's one of those things that you're supposed to be able to do in your house. It can be something that you do for like 15 minutes. It could be something that you do for an hour. So I think it would be a good exercise way of like getting my body in shape, sort of in the heart, but also in like the muscle, you know? Like I've seen that it definitely makes you stronger and a little bit more, like your stamina is tested a little bit. And mine's currently terrible. So I want to start, and then across this like month, I'm gonna give it a go, I think. Maybe like once, twice a week, we'll see, depending on how much I enjoy it. I did try and do yoga once, but I was really bad at it. But I've gotten better. I've been stretching. So that's why I want to do that, and I'm just going to put that in so that it's like official and I can't back out, you know? I have to do that this week. Because as I said, it's the 1st of October. So this is like the whole of October, basically. I want to learn finger positions in week 2. That is, again, that's a violin thing. I feel like, again, once I've learned how to read the notes, it makes sense that I'd get like how to actually hold it and stuff and like do, you know? Um, I feel like I should get that stuff, and understanding what position means what note is being played, right? Like that's what I really want to do, is I want to make sure that I actually understand how to play the notes that are being given to me. And then when I research books by Chinese authors, thinking about Asian literature is something that, again, it's very easy, I think, to be diverse in that area because there are a lot of authors. Specifically, there is one book that I cannot remember the exact name of. I think it's like She Who Became the Sun. I don't know if that's fantasy. It always struck me as fantasy. And I just think that there is so much interesting stuff in Chinese history and culture that the books by those authors would be really interesting. So I thought that would be a nice one to do next. Again, sticking in that theme of a very different sort of lifestyle than my own, because I think, you know, it's still diverse to be reading books by Europeans if you are from white Britain and you haven't really read much about the history of, for example, some of the Scandinavian countries, or, you know, some of like the Balkans, for example, or going into like sort of like Turkey and stuff. I think that the further that you go, the more diverse it is, the more different it's going to be from your own personal worldview. Like the further away you get, the more different things are going to be, the more that you're going to learn about other people. But it's still good to learn about your neighbours who are like right there. So I do plan on doing that, but I want to push a little bit more. And then write notes. Nope. Read one more chapter of my French textbook. Again, I'll have at that point figured out where I was at, remembered all of that stuff. I want to add to my knowledge. You're gonna see this. I basically did this every week from now because like there's not like a whole lot that I can do. Like I always revise when I start learning something new. I revise the old material and then move on to it. So there's not really any way for me to shake it up because like that's the only way that I'm gonna get better, is if I keep reading this book that teaches me piece by piece how to get better at French. So at this current stage of my learning of French, where I'm not like the most fluent, but like don't even test me, please. I know like a fair bit, but not enough that I could be like having whole conversations in French with a fluent speaker. Do you know what I mean? So like there's not a whole lot that I can do until I get a little bit better at it. So I'm not pushing myself, which is why you will see this same exact thing written in different ways because I was just like, I don't want to write it the exact same way. But yeah, I'm gonna do that and then write notes on The Secret History and Articles Found. This is like the 3 articles or journals, right? That's the stuff that's being referenced here. So basically I have actually notes in, this is a notebook that my mum got me and I decided to use it for my dissertation. So this is like my notes on The Secret History. I did a chapter by chapter and then nothing really happens in the last half of the book. Did I say half? So I just kind of got a little bit, you know, like when stuff happened I wrote about it because I've read it before and I'll have to read it again, but I made a bunch of notes in the book and I've actually ordered a second copy of The Little Friend because I really liked The Little Friend. And I didn't make any notes on that on the first read because I don't really think you should do that. but I didn't want to ruin the copy that I first read because that was a book that I really liked, actually. So you'll see that later on. Not in this like month, but in later months, possibly next year. So I've given myself a bit more time. I do want to reread The Little Friend and like make notes in this new copy, which is coming soon. I also ordered a copy of a book that is for my course so that I can start reading that. So that'll probably be on here at some point too. I had 2 books that were on my uni reading list. But yeah, basically I just made a bunch of notes, but I want to make notes like this on a digital document so that I can look through them easily. And I also want to analyze a few of these things and maybe a few quotes so that I get the right gist of, because as well, like my focus has sharpened since I read The Secret History and The Little Friend, because I'd never read The Secret, like I'd read The Secret History, I hadn't read The Little Friend, and I hadn't read The Goldfinch. I still haven't read The Goldfinch, you will see that in a second, but I just, like, I didn't know, because I hadn't read them, what the specific focus was. I have now sharpened it a lot. And so I want to make my notes on The Secret History, and I want to make my notes on those articles, and I want them to be digital, but I'll probably also write them down in the book, just in case. Just to clarify in my own head, because again, I want to be in that academic headspace, and I want to be thinking about these books in that way. And I think it's just helpful to me to be like starting it in that sense. I then want to create settings for the Search for Happiness. That's what TSFH is. That basically means that I want to make sure that I know all of the different areas that they're going to be going to, all of the areas sort of near those, and coming up with like little histories, little names and stuff like that. And basically I feel like that's a pretty important part of the world building, is the actual world itself. So yeah, I'm taking so long to get through this. I'm so sorry. I really am not concise. I will try my best to make the documentation better. Week 3, I want to learn chords. This, again, it's violin. I'm not going to explain that too much. Research books by African authors. I'm not sure exactly where I would want to learn, but I'm thinking maybe Nigeria, because I do find specifically like Nigeria to be very interesting. The main character of my vampire book, the male love interest, his father is Nigerian. It's why their names are of Nigerian origin, because he's Nigerian, so he named his son a Nigerian name. But I think I will just have a look and see if there are any Black African authors specifically who have written books about the continent that they live on, about their specific countries, about I think a very common theme would be colonialism. I do plan on reading Wide Sargasso Sea, and I think I want to read the African Trilogy, which I'll see. It depends, because that's 3 books that I'd be committing to reading. We'll see, whatever, it's fine. But that's why I've just written African, because I don't know which country would be the most interesting to read about, and I'm leaning towards Nigeria, but I want to see. Read one more French chapter. Read The Goldfinch, that's what that is. This will probably take, if it's about 800-ish words, I think. So it'd be about, well, it'd be a little more than a week if I read 50 pages a day, but I wouldn't probably read 50 pages a day. I'd probably read closer to 100, maybe a little less. It depends on the size of the text. The Little Friend had tiny text, which The Secret History didn't. So I don't, I think it's when like books get longer, and they're like, oh, that's a lot of words, we should make the text tinier so that it fits on less pages. And it's like, yeah, that's great, thank you for that, really messing with my head over how long it's taking me to read a page. But I do think that if the writing isn't too tiny, I should be able to get through that in like 2 weeks. And then I want to do religions in the fantasy story, because the religions that I have are all for the bigger fantasy world, not this one. And I think it would be good to go over the Welsh mythos, because we could maybe see what sort of more Celtic religion was like. Which I should know anyway, to be fair. I do need to research more about the Celts, because there were British Celts, not just Welsh, not just, like, they were from everywhere in Britain. And it all I know is from when we learned about the Roman, like, invasion and the colonization that the Romans did way back when, like, when, and I think that's interesting. I want to learn more about it. It's not on this because I am focusing on like more practical things right now, but eventually I will probably do that. Then we go on to week 4, learn a simple song. That's realistically going to be like Baa Baa Black Sheep or something. Or what's the other one? There's like a Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, that one. Probably one of those. Research books by Moroccan authors. This one, I feel like it'd be really interesting. I actually don't know that much about Morocco, so I'm kind of intrigued to see some Moroccan stories. And I think that, again, it's kind of different to the sort of like Asia of like Vietnam and China. It's got that sort of quality that you would often see in like the Oriental stories of like the 1900s, when people didn't really understand how to do race stuff in their books. And so I think it'd be interesting to read about that sort of setting, but from an actual Moroccan author. Because that's like the point, is that you don't just want to read what white people have written about places that they deem exotic. There's whole criticisms of it. I'm not of like that sort of stuff. It's why I don't like when books italicize words that are not English. I get why they would do it, in order to make people be like, you are not an idiot, this is not an English word. But also, it's like, this is a book written by a Japanese author, and you're making the Japanese words stand out. Like, it doesn't, I don't like it as much, because it's kind of like, it's making it like, oh, look how different it is, and it's just a language, but yeah, I don't love it for that reason. But I think that's why it's important to diversify, and I'm just curious about Morocco, to be honest. Another French chapter. Notes on the Goldfinch. If I don't finish reading the Goldfinch, obviously I'm not going to try and make a bunch of notes, but I could always type up the notes that I've already got, because while I didn't have like chapter by chapter descriptions of what happened for the little friend, I did have ideas of like, this could be, like something I discuss generally, so I can do that, and I will count that, and then develop the plot of The Search for Happiness, which I have a vague outline, but I think I want to go over it, because I've since written a bunch more outlines for books and actually written those books, so I want to go over it again, especially when I've done the world building and I actually know. I think it would be more interesting if I don't just be like, they go to this place, they go to this place, but if I go, they go to this place and this culture impacts them in this, like, it just, to me, it makes more sense. So I'm gonna go and I may actually, what I will do, I wasn't gonna do this, I was gonna make it in this video, but I think what I'll do is I will upload this video as is, and then I will do an update video at the end of the month when I've done it, and I will go over everything and I'll be like, did I do this? And we'll see. But I think just But I want to right now go do some writing. I have like a bunch of stuff that I should probably be doing. So I'm gonna do that and I will get back to you. So thank you for watching and goodbye.